Jennifer. And do you want to start?
So I am an old girl. I was at Merchants for my whole school career. My mum was a teacher at Stanfield. Most of my generation would know her, Mrs. Johnston. Therefore, my sister and I stayed at the school right the way through. I was at the girls' school. My first year at the girls' school was the centenary. So it seems a bit weird now. We're at the 400th anniversary of the whole school. And my daughter is now in year 7 in seniors. So kind of come full circle. And I'm now having to get used to going in as a parent, which is really, really strange in itself. I am naturally an arty person. I've no talent when it comes to math, science, even business to a degree. So all the subjects I chose right the way through were on the art side. So I'm not terribly helpful when it comes to the other side of things. All I can really speak of is the choices that I made. And so for GCSE, I chose to do history, geography, classics, etc. And I did dual award science rather than doing 3 sciences. And then I should explain actually first, because it explains the choice of A levels. I didn't do music GCSE and I didn't do music A level, because I actually went to university and became a barrister first. So I was a lawyer first. So my choices for A level were very much about what I thought I would do best in. Music wasn't completely out of the horizon, but it wasn't sort of front and center. So my choices for A level were English literature, history, geography, and then we had to do general studies. I don't know if that still applies.
Not anymore.
Right. So I did 4 A levels, but general studies wasn't counted in any of my university offers. So it was mildly pointless to a degree, except that actually it was quite good for us in a general sense, because we were forced to do stuff we'd never do otherwise. But my main 3 subjects were clearly on the sort of humanities side and arts side. And then I went to Gonville and Caius College, Cambridge, which is one of the oldest colleges at Cambridge University, and read law there. But I was also a choral scholar for my first year until I got thrown out of the choir for being too loud. And I'm quite proud now. I was proud then, really, even. And so I did carry on doing music, and I did quite a lot while I was at Cambridge. And then when I moved to London after graduated, I went to the Inns of Court School of Law and then straight into pupillage. I carried on doing bits of singing. It was only when I got to 3 years in practice, and I sang at a wedding of a friend, and there were some very important people from the music industry there who said they didn't understand why I wasn't singing as a job. So after some thought and talking to my chambers, I said, oh, okay, I'll take a year out and I'll apply to go and study at one of the conservatoires. So I applied to the Royal College of Music, amongst others, and the Royal College gave me a scholarship. So I went and started singing, and I never went back to law in the end. So that's sort of a nutshell how it's worked. So
Okay, so what made you initially apply for law then, Jennifer?
Anybody that was at school with me wouldn't have been remotely surprised that I wanted to be a barrister, because I'm naturally quite argumentative and wasn't one to sort of back down if I felt there was an injustice in the world at the age of 17. And I did a lot of drama at school, so I don't think, when you look at the 2 professions, solicitors and barristers, they are very different. And I was never interested in being a solicitor, much to the disgust actually of my dad's identical twin, who was a solicitor. That he was really cross with me, that right from the word go I said that the bar was for me. And so when I think I was possibly 16, I might have even been 15, there was a family at school who were friends with my parents as well, who both were barristers. So I went and started doing some work experience with them. And Chris ended up as a judge actually in Preston Crown Court. So I got lots of experience going with them during school holidays, and even like occasionally like on a Wednesday afternoon. We used to have Wednesday afternoons for doing sort of in sixth form for doing sort of outreach, I suppose you'd call it, or our own things. And so I went to court a few times then just to sit in on stuff. So it was pretty clear in my head. I never wavered. So, and I never really had sort of thoughts of doing anything else actually. But singing was always there in the background. So I don't think I'm unusual in that I have two things that I'm good at and could do in life. So I've done both of them now. So at least I feel fulfilled in that sense. And interestingly, since leaving the law, I haven't really looked back. So I feel that I've did it all the way I should have in that respect, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Did you enjoy your time as a barrister then?
Yes, but it was fearsomely hard work. I mean, in one calendar year, I had less than 2 weeks holiday, including weekends. I literally never stopped. And I don't just mean like in terms of days. There would be nights where I'd be up preparing a case to be in court the following day, and I'd go to bed at 3 o'clock in the morning and have to get up at 6 to get a train to court. It is completely relentless. So do I miss that? No. It's the short answer. But equally, I feel that the bar has a very important role to play in society, and some of the cases I did were really very important. And it was a very sort of fulfilling thing to be part of a system where you genuinely were making a difference to people's lives. And also, you know, dealing with pretty traumatic stuff actually has given me a sense of perspective later as an adult, generally. And as a performer, it sort of meant that I know that I'm not saving lives as a performer. I'm giving pleasure to a great big audience, you know, potentially worldwide sometimes, but I'm not saving lives, and I'm not making a difference in the way that I did as a lawyer. So there is a difference. But equally, in some ways, both jobs are quite similar, because at the bar you do perform, you're in court in front of a judge, and it is very much a performance in most respects.
So you've gone from something that sounds hugely structured and centred around routine, I guess, as a barrister.
No.
What does your... Not at all.
Not at all. As a barrister, it's the same as being a singer. You take what work comes and you do it.
Okay.
There's no routine at all. And so I don't like routine, I think, now. Anyway, sorry, I interrupted you.
No. So I was going to say, obviously your week was filled with travelling and on different cases. What does your average week look like now, Jennifer?
Pretty similar.
Yeah.
The difference is that where before, when you're a barrister, you practice in England and Wales only. My career is now worldwide, so I've found myself in some pretty far-flung places for work. There isn't a pattern, just as there wasn't at the bar. And a bit like at the bar, certain solicitors would instruct me quite a lot. Certain orchestras I work with more than others. There genuinely are similarities, and a barrister's clerk does the same job as my agent now. So that relationship is the same too. So I still have a relationship with my clerks from my chambers. They still very occasionally will ask if I would be willing to come in and work, to which the answer is no, thank you. When they're snowed under. I'm too far out of it now, and I think I'd probably be negligent if I tried to go back into practice now. But it's surprising how similar they can be. The other thing that's different is that if I was doing a long case in the UK, I'd be able to come home. But if I'm doing an opera abroad, then very often I can be away for 2 months at a time. and can't always come home. So that can be very hard and isn't always that enjoyable, really. So this period of being forced to be at home is turning into something that I'm quite enjoying in many respects.
Yeah. When you changed professions, did you feel a lot of pressure from family or friends, or what did people think about your change?
My dad thought I was completely mad and said, "You'll never make a living as a singer," and then has been thoroughly proved wrong, which makes me joyous. And he's willing to admit it as well, to be fair. He still talks about it now, that he never imagined that I would have a career which would sustain not just me but a child, and where I own a house, or he was quite funny about it. But none of my family are musicians apart from me, so they don't have the experience to comment in that sense. They've just had to watch me get on with it, and it's turned into something probably more significant than I expected as well, to be honest, because you simply never know. And the field is so broad. There are so many people worldwide that study singing, that to make your name, to find a place for you in an industry that's very overcrowded is quite hard. The bar, it weeds out earlier than that. To get a pupillage is really tough. So if you get a pupillage, you're halfway there, and then if you get a tenancy, you're fine. So, but it now, of course, is different anyway. I didn't pay anything to go to university, and I didn't pay anything for bar school because I got a scholarship from Gray's Inn, and I didn't pay anything for pupillage. They paid me. I was given a salary, so I never had to take on the debt that kids today have to face. And when they're looking at making decisions at the age of 17, I think that's a big issue now, because I think the last count to become a barrister, and this is post-university, you're probably talking about taking a debt on of over 40,000.
Yeah.
So it's got to be something that they would want to do and be sure of. Whereas I think becoming a solicitor is easier because you get a training contract and a salary and so on. So the bar is shrinking, and it's as competitive as it ever was to get in to the top chambers. But it's just a slightly different world than I encountered, I would say.
I've got a question then. So obviously your route into music was via being a barrister first, studying law. What advice would you give to students possibly currently in their GCSE years or slightly further down the school, or even at A-level, that are considering taking music at university or at a conservatoire, but a bit like yourself, are torn between that and other subjects that they're also very, very good at?
The thing is that being a musician doesn't have to stop the moment you go to university. And one advantage of not doing music at Cambridge was that I got to do all of the stuff that all the music students were doing, but then I also had a different life academically. And so I'm suppose proof that you can choose to do music later on. And actually, there are a lot of people who do other degrees and then go into music at postgrad level. I think there's real merit to that approach. Not everybody is clear at 18 what they want to do. Where voices are concerned, your voice might not be mature enough actually to go at 18 to go and do singing at a conservatoire. It's a pretty brutal life being an undergrad singer, and not all those who do music at undergrad will carry on into the music profession, is the other thing. Yeah. There's a natural, I mean, I suppose it's like natural selection. There's a natural filtering out that goes on, because it's the same in any subject. You are a big fish in a small pond at school. You think, oh, this is great. I'm doing all right here. This is fine. I'm obviously good at what I do, what my choices are. But as I discovered going to Cambridge, you go through a fairly rigorous selection process for Oxbridge, which differs from obviously other universities. And I thought, okay, well, I'll get there and it'll all be fine. I got there, I was completely intimidated, because suddenly I was a very small fish in a relatively small pond where everybody around me was more intelligent than me. And there was a bit of an adjustment sort of period needed where I had to sort of face the sort of realization that I perhaps wasn't as good as I thought I was. You know, that you lose all cockiness actually.
Yeah.
You know, any swagger that you had at school, any credit that I was given for being for getting an Oxbridge place and then getting the grades was completely wiped away within about the first week, I would say. But interesting this, because lawyers, if you look at my year of law at Cambridge, not all of us went into the law, or others have done what I've done, where they've gone into law and then moved on to something else. So one of my supervision partners was Richard Ayoade from the IT crowd, who now presents Crystal May, who's on telly. So we used to have criminology supervisions together. We were at different colleges. And so for some subjects, there weren't enough people doing it. You had to be supervised with people from other colleges. So I was put with him. And he's a really nice guy. And at that point, of course, we were both doing law. So we never really thought about it, that we might both end up doing something completely wild. We laugh about the fact that we think that we don't know whether the criminology supervisor realises what we're both doing now, you know, so far out of the realm of what they would have considered we're likely to do. Somebody else who was at my college a few years ahead who read law was Stephen Mangan, the actor, as well. So there are plenty of examples of people who do a degree that isn't what they end up doing professionally. So I would say, I think my best advice would be to choose your degree based on what you think you are best at and enjoy most. And if you haven't yet made a decision about what you want to do for a job, there is plenty of time. If you discover that you regret your decision, you can always change subjects at university. You could also do what now Muriel Cunningham, who's an old merchant's girl, went to Oxford to read chemistry and dropped out halfway through to go to the Guildhall to become an opera singer, and started her undergraduate years again. So there's an example very close to home of somebody who made the switch. And it is possible. There's always ways through if you think you've made a mistake. So don't feel too much pressure, because, you know, yes, people say, oh, the decisions you make at 17 are really important, and but there are plenty of examples of things where people have thought, actually, this isn't what I thought it was going to be as well. You can get to university and the course be not quite what you thought. You can have some experience in life that changes your mind as well. So I think retaining some form of sensible flexibility in your head is quite a helpful thing.
Okay, that's really, really helpful, because we try and say to the students that, I mean, I know law sounds like a vocation, but lots of students will study law and not go into a law profession.
Absolutely.
You know, the skills are just as valuable as long as you're interested.
Absolutely. If I had to summarise what I thought the skills were that I got from reading law, they are completely transferable. And one of my other friends from school who came to Cambridge with me, Gemma Keenan, read law to start with, and then halfway through her degree she switched to SBS, which is social and political science, and is now a banker. So and she would say that the skills she learned in that, I think she did first 2 years of law. I mean, she's still one of my very good friends, so I could ask her actually, but she is somebody who would say, like me, the sort of analytical skills that you're taught, the capacity to sort of write an essay, or just even about learning about society, because you learn a lot about society reading law. There are a lot of politicians who've come from a legal background. There are just a lot of, there's business people, it isn't a fixed thing that at the end of it, you have to go and become a solicitor or a barrister. Or you might well want to go and qualify as one or the other, but then you might end up doing what I've got friends who've done, who've gone to qualify and then gone into a business as an in-house lawyer, which is a different thing really from being either a solicitor or a barrister. So all I would say is don't shut down your options at this point. The choices you make now do have an impact on the future, but don't narrow yourself to the point where you're boxed in, and go with, you know, I would say where you truly believe your talent lies. Now, sometimes that doesn't accord with what your family might want for you. So, as I discovered, and so you sometimes have to resist the pressure that you feel at home and strike out in the world. Somebody else who's a merchant's girl, Nikki Swift, who was in the year below me, is currently she's singing the Julie Walters role in Mamma Mia in the West End. She's been in Les Mis, and so she was another one who had to sort of break out of what you know, our families might have expected us to do, and she went straight for it. She went to the Royal Academy of Music to do their musical theatre course as an undergrad, and has flourished ever since. So you just have to, I would say, develop an instinct about what it is that you feel you can see for yourself in the future. It won't be what you think it is going to be, but you, at least if you try and listen to yourself and sort of block out some of the noise around some of the stuff that you can feel or hear, that other people's opinions, you do still have to do this yourself, these degrees, these jobs, and it is really important that you go into a field where you actually like it.
Can you tell us about your time at the Conservatoire, the Royal College?
That was another example of turning up to somewhere and thinking I was quite good until I got there. It was a real shock to my system because I had no idea what I was doing. It was really quite funny. But I was signed by the agency that I'm with now in my first term, even at the college. So I knew pretty quickly that I was on a course for a career that perhaps didn't match what other people were doing. My trajectory was much more steep and quick than many, but that's to do with my voice type, which is very, very rare. There's a tiny fraction of people in the world who can sing what I do. So I don't have the battle now or then that sopranos do, for instance. I'm a mezzo contralto, which is a very unusual thing. So in that sense, I'm very fortunate genetically to have been born with the voice that I've got. So I have to be grateful, obviously, for that. Studying at a conservatoire is full on, but not for the reasons you would think. They don't do very much teaching in real terms. So your day is not filled with endless classes. What it's filled with is politics, pressure, and stress, where it's a lot more to do with personality than it is to do with talent at times. And in order to survive at an environment like that, you really have to be quite sure of yourself before you start. So it does not suit everybody. There are people who would be much better off at a normal university doing music than they would at a conservatoire. It is a very unique environment, and you get amazing teaching, and you get amazing teachers, and you get amazing experiences, but you have to be ready for them. I'm of a personality that I can ride out most things, and in particular, I'm somebody, and it was the same at the bar, I can ride out being criticised endlessly because I sort of just block it out. Not everybody can do that. And so both my professions wouldn't suit a vast number of people because they would take personally what was said to them all the time. And I'm still, even now, I mean, I have to face criticism in the international press all the time still. and directors shouting at me and conductors getting cross for no reason generally. You know, that there's plenty of negativity in the world that I exist in. You just have to be the sort of person that it doesn't crucify, because it isn't, as I say, no job is for everybody, but my particular industry is definitely not for everyone. And so and conservatoires are sort of the beginning of that you have to learn how to swim against quite a fast moving and fierce tide. It was a bit the same when I joined the BBC's New Generation Artist Programme, their Young Artist Programme on Radio 3. That's not, at the time I did it, you couldn't even apply to be on it. They gave it you. And I spent 2 years where I recorded a bewilderingly large number of pieces with orchestra or in the studio, whatever, for the BBC. And the amount of learning that took, not least, but also the amount of confidence that takes. I mean, it tested me to my limits, and I'm pretty good at coping. There have been others on the scheme who found that very hard. And so that's, I suppose, another example of where personality counts for something in the industries that I've been in. So yes, conservatoires, they're like a sort of micro version of the industry, and there are inexplicable things that can happen when personality clashes and whatever. That said, if you want to be a classical musician, and in particular if you're an instrumentalist, the conservatoires are the best place to be. And so that's a tricky thing too. If you are of a level where you think you're going to be a soloist, because, you know, particularly if you've been somebody who's studied at the Royal Northern, let's say, since you were in the junior college, and they know how good you are, and maybe you've won Young Musician of the Year sort of section finals or something, then going to a normal university would probably mean those 3 years might be essentially wasted. So there's a tricky balance, and it has to be right for you. So just take the advice that you're given by people who know what they're talking about as well.
I've had a couple of questions. So the first one is, whose wedding did you sing at? So
this is quite a funny story. Well, this is quite a funny story for lots of reasons. So a friend of mine, Henry, who's a barrister, married Ruth, who's a solicitor, and Ruth is from Suffolk. So the wedding was in Framlingham in Suffolk, and I sang, and the Clearberries were there. Sir Stephen Clearbury died recently. He was in charge of King's College, Cambridge Choir, and he was somebody I'd known as a student, and he was very important in the music industry. And it was him that in particular said, why aren't you singing? And in fact, he coached me for my auditions then at the conservatoires, because he believed so firmly that I should be doing it. But at that wedding, in the choir was a little 7-year-old choir boy with ginger hair, who was an adult, still lives in Suffolk, and his name is Ed Sheeran, and I did a duet with him. So Henry and Ruth think it's the funniest thing in the world that they had at their wedding an opera singer and Ed Sheeran.
What did you sing together?
Pia Jesu.
Oh really? That's amazing.
Yeah. So
and do you think if that hadn't happened?
My dad met Ed Sheeran recently at the cricket in Manchester, and he told him, and he remembers the wedding. So.
Does he remember it? Yeah, because that's what you want. I mean, if he said, no, I don't remember that, then that would be...
No, and in fact, he took a photo with my dad, for my dad to say hi to me. It was really funny, the whole thing.
That is amazing.
Yeah, this is really funny.
What a great story. Do you think if that hadn't have happened then at that wedding, you'd still be a barrister now?
I don't know, is the answer. How can I ever know? I think if I hadn't have done it when I did, I think I probably would have got too comfortable at the bar. Not just earning money, and just, you get caught in a track. And
Yeah.
I think I was pretty lucky. I was in one of the very big famous chambers in London, One Crown Office Row, who are an amazing chambers, and I think I think some people thought I was mad leaving them at all, because most people would kill to be in a chambers like that. So it was a weird thing, the whole thing. I think some things are meant to be, though, and for lots of reasons, I have absolutely no regrets. So I always think you regret the things you don't do, but you never regret what you do.
Yeah.
Unless
That's really good.
Commit a crime, I would say.
Really good advice. So what is the best part and the worst part of your current career?
The best part is the music. I'm incredibly lucky that the music that's written for my voice is some of the best music around. And I am, a lot of my colleagues would say as well, they're jealous of me, because my voice type is the voice type that Mahler in particular wrote everything for. And Wagner also wrote a lot, and Elgar. And I just am very fortunate that I genuinely love the things that I sing. The worst part is being on my own in foreign countries where I don't speak the language, I don't know anyone, and I'm there for too long, and I get lonely and homesick. So you pay a price. Whatever you do in life, you pay a price. For the girls listening, don't believe people when they say you can have it all. Because at some point, if you want to have a family, you will pay a price for your career, or you will pay a price not spending enough time with your children.
So somebody has asked that question, actually. Sorry to interrupt you, Jennifer. So somebody has said, how have you found balancing an international singing career with being a parent? Did your daughter travel with you when she was younger, or did you have a base where she grew up?
She's always grown up. Well, I'm a single parent, firstly. So when I work abroad, I have a nanny. And we've had our nanny for 5 years now. And Ruby and Ava love each other, but they do fight. It's quite funny. Because Ava's like an older sister. She's in her late 20s. And so the pair of them are hilarious. I mean, there'll be days when they have a fantastic time, and there'll be days when they're at each other's throats. And that's healthy, because it means then that they genuinely know each other really well. And so I don't worry about going away to work in that sense. But I do also take her with me now, even. I always have. So sometimes Ava will travel with us, or like I sang for the emperor in Japan, the old emperor, the one that's just abdicated, and they flew me out for one concert, which I had half an hour's rehearsal for. So it was a long way to go. So I thought, okay, her old school, I asked, I think this is a silly situation. What I think I'm going to do is take her with me, and we're going to then spend 2 weeks in Japan traveling. And her old school allowed that. We had to Skype her class from Tokyo so that she could tell them about it, do a presentation. But it was the most amazing thing for her, because she understood what I was doing isn't normal, in a good way, that there are benefits to the job that I do. And her whole horizons were opened by being in Japan. And we travelled the length of Japan. So we got the bullet train from the north down to the south, and she went to Hiroshima, and she understood about the nuclear bomb. And the amount she learned in those 2 weeks was extraordinary. So my policy is generally to take her with me when I'm able. I'm not always able. I mean, I'm supposed to be working in Beijing in the spring next year. Whether after this virus I feel confident about taking her to China, we'll have to wait and see. But she's been to lots of places. She's been to America, South America, China, Hong Kong, lots of experiences, because actually that is a huge bonus to my job. As hard as it is to be separated from her when I'm away and I have to leave her at school, clearly. And as she's getting older, that school time is very important. So I'm not going to disrupt her diary. to just take her somewhere random. But so again, there's a payoff. You know, you make it work. You make it work for you. I'm not away all the time, and we try to solve issues by making sure that she FaceTimes me every day and whatever. So yeah, that from my experience, in everybody's life as a parent, there is a compromise, and so you just have to work out where your compromise is, and so that you shouldn't not have a family, in my view, because of your job. So.
Thank you, that was excellent. Do any other students that are with us have any more questions? I think there might be a couple coming through, so just bear with me.
That's okay. I'm in no hurry. I haven't got a vast amount to do today.
What time's your next call?
So at 5 o'clock, I'm doing an Instagram live. So in the break between this and that, we're going out for a bike ride.
Oh, nice. Do you still have to audition? That's what somebody's asking.
No. It's a weird thing. You have to audition a lot, and then all of a sudden you don't anymore. I haven't done an audition for the last 7 years, 8 years maybe. Auditions are a whole world of pain, so I feel very relieved that I don't have to face that anymore. I'm now on panels, I find, so I adjudicate at the Royal College of Music sometimes for competitions and things, and I very much appreciate how it feels to stand in their shoes. It's a pretty horrible thing, and there's a real art to it. Some people are very good at it naturally and others aren't. You have to learn how to do auditions and not cave in to the nerves that you feel. I do work with very advanced students on managing nerves and anxiety, because there are techniques that you can use, but it's a tough thing to face. But unfortunately, it's part and parcel of what we do.
Have you had to cancel much with the virus and the lockdown? And
yeah, I'm supposed to be right now in Frankfurt singing Benjamin Britten's opera Peter Grimes, and clearly I'm not. And then I don't know yet. The German government are deciding what they're going to do this coming weekend. We all think it's highly unlikely that the opera houses will open again before the end of the season. I've got 3 contracts in Munich between now and July. I don't know yet what will happen with them. And then from July to the end of August, I am supposed to be at Glyndebourne, and they think they're going to carry on at the moment, but that could change. So it's all just up in the air, and we're having to just take it day by day, like everybody else. But I should also say that as a freelancer, income-wise, when stuff's cancelled, it's me that carries those losses on the whole. So that's the downside of being self-employed. And this crisis has really brought to light there will have to be changes in my industry as a result of this crisis, because a lot of freelancers have been left high and dry. And we all think that contracts will have to change so that we're guaranteed at least a minimum level of income if something's cancelled. Yeah. And that will be something that goes across the board. So when students are considering what careers they want to do, I think from here on in, people won't be quite so willing to be self-employed anymore. And I think that's what this crisis will have changed in our society, that people want certainty of the guarantees that you get on an employment contract. So for all that I can say what I'm saying now, this crisis will change a lot for a lot of people. And that's something that the students who in particular are coming up to choosing their degrees might want to think about. I think critically, there are degrees that you can choose where you were offered things like a year in industry.
Yeah.
Those are going to be incredibly valuable from now on.
Yeah, I mean, even before this, I
personally think more valuable.
Yeah, even before this, they hugely they thought about 40% increase increase on employability if you did an internship or a placement year. And I think, like you said, that will grow and grow in terms of the value added.
I think you can look at the red brick university system, so the Russell Group, etc., as being valuable degrees. Of course they are, but equally you might find that doing a degree somewhere like John Moore's, where you're offered a year in industry in a quite niche industry, where you will almost certainly be guaranteed a job after it, is a better path to take. So people have got to wake up and not waste the money that you're going to spend on being a student by doing an English degree at a mid-ranking university, which is going to give you. So the research that everybody needs to do is even more important now. Looking at what apprenticeships are out there, looking at what universities have natural links to industry, or to, like, for instance, if you're want to be a journalist, which are the universities that are providing the people that are going onto the apprentice schemes at the big broadsheet newspapers? Which are the universities they look at most seriously? Which are the universities that have most students getting pupilages at the bar? So you have to almost do the research by turning it on its head. You're almost having to look another step ahead to choose your university if you know what area you want to go into. It's very hard, but equally it will pay dividends because it will help you make clear decisions now. And those are things that nobody really tells you. You only learn for yourself, and so it's only with the benefit of experience that I know that that's the case. The trouble is that you can find yourself doing something that's not going to help you later on, and that would be a terrible shame at this stage, particularly where you right now have choices. What we don't know is what is going to happen with industry, because with an economic shutdown followed by potentially a recession, there may be an impact from that. So we can't know that yet. But equally, you can put yourself in the best position possible by firstly learning the lesson of the current batch of A-level students, that you have to do well in your mocks as well as in the real exams. Sadly, you're going to have to do well in every exam you take from now on, because it might well be that they change the system from here. They might have learnt the lesson that letting everything rest on one set of exams can be difficult. So there's that. If you want to go for Oxbridge, you are going to have to work hard anyway. There is no replacement for getting top grades, and not only having top grades, but having other things on your CV. And then if you're not an Oxbridge candidate, you really need to focus on making the very best decision based on all the factors that pertain to you. And that can also include the extracurricular stuff you do, because for some people you might have several universities to choose from, but one might offer more strength and depth in doing something other than the academic course that you're doing. It might be that if you're a gifted footballer, for instance, has a particularly good team with a link to outside. So much to think about. I mean, they're lucky, aren't they, offering advice? So
yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right. Whatever stage you're at, it's about making it an informed decision. So looking at all the information before deciding. And if you do want to go and study English, that's absolutely fine, as long as you've looked at all the other options. Yep. and considered what you might end up doing with it at the end. I think you're absolutely right, Jennifer. Just one final question before we start wrapping up, because I'm conscious that we're keeping you for a long time and you've got a bike ride waiting. Is there any literature or pieces of advice that you can recommend which would help students with nerves in auditions?
No, sadly, my experience is that if you have somebody who has anxiety, send them to me one-to-one, because it's a physical thing largely, and it's not something you can really read in a book. The techniques that I use, which actually a lot of performers use, in fact, are things that I would have to show somebody how to do. It's not something you can give somebody a piece of paper and say, follow these instructions, and Bob's your uncle, here's the magic. Nerves and anxiety, obviously, people suffer over exams, they suffer over not just auditions or performance anxiety. It is absolutely imperative, if you know you suffer from exam anxiety in particular, that you seek help. School has a great counsellor. You go and ask for help, because it can be so counterproductive. But if you've been taught the right techniques and you can put those in place long before you sit any important exams, then you will help yourself enormously. It takes courage to do that, because it takes you to acknowledge that you've got a problem. I'm somebody that has massive anxiety over exams, always have had. I don't worry about auditions, but written exams is something that I found very, very stressful, and I did all the way through. And I got help. Bizarrely, in my time, we didn't have a school counsellor. It was my GP who helped. She was amazing, and she taught me some of the techniques that I now use with other people. So if any of you listening know that you have an issue and want to talk to me, school have my contact details. I'm very happy to chat to any of you. If you even just want to talk to somebody who's been through it all at a high level, because the pressure at Oxbridge is bigger than at a lot of the places, and it definitely helps, as I say, to have things in your back pocket so that you can cope with anything that comes up.
Thank you, Jennifer. That's absolutely excellent, and I'm sure some of the students will take you up on your really, really kind offer. I think I'll wrap it up there, as no more questions are coming in. So if you could just hold on there, and if I ask the students to leave the conversation unless they've got anything to write in the left-hand box. So we'll just give it a couple more minutes, but thank you ever so much. That was fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.